Business News Now, and Stephen Carroll is here. Morning, Stephen.
Hi, hello.
We're going to start off with a look at the markets, which are having a good day over in Asia.
Particularly in Japan, in fact. The markets there, the Nikkei in Tokyo, finishing up, or rather just before the close, was up by over 3% in trading. So it's having a particularly good day. And it's a clean sweep of gains across the Asian markets today. The Kospi and Seoul up 1.5%, and still some gains on the Chinese markets as well. Generally speaking, the market's getting a lift from a good lead from Wall Street overnight. Shares also riding high from that better than expected trade data that came out of China on Wednesday. We're also keeping an eye on what's happening on the oil markets for you today. That's ahead of the oil producers meeting that's happening in Doha on Sunday. Both of the main oil indexes there, as you can see, down slightly on the day, but still near the highest point we've seen them this year. Brent crude, the international benchmark for oil, trading at about $43.50 a barrel. So still very strong oil prices ahead of that meeting this Sunday.
Let's turn now to the International Monetary Fund, Stephen. They're warning of more turmoil in the markets ahead.
The IMF and the World Bank are holding their spring meetings this week. They bring together finance ministers and central bankers from around the world. France 24's Marcus Carlson's in Washington for the meetings, and he's been speaking to Jose Vinales from the IMF and asked him if we could see more market turmoil ahead.
We could. And in fact, these turmoils could be longer and more intense than the ones that we have seen. And this is something that could take a toll on the real economy and set in motion an adverse feedback loop between financial markets, confidence, and the real economy. But we do not necessarily have to see that repeated. That can be prevented. And for that, what you need is a more balanced and potent policy mix, which enhances confidence. Confidence that we're going to end up in a better place rather than running the risk of getting stuck in a worse place.
Stephen, we're heading to London next, where the French government's trying to win over some of its own young business people.
Moving abroad has become a bit of a tradition for many young French entrepreneurs. For years, they've been taking their business ideas to places where they say they have easier access to investors and face less red tape. London's always been a popular destination. Now the French government wants to bring these people together and support them with the opening of a new French tech hub there. Our correspondents Lucy Fielder and Hervé Amaric met some of those who'll be joining the group.
Made.com puts furniture designers in contact with buyers at a fraction of high street prices. Created 3 years ago by a Frenchman, it now employs 240 people here.
I met my business partner here. I met our first investor here. When it comes to e-commerce, the UK market is at a more advanced stage than the rest of Europe.
Albin Servion runs Easy Roommate, a startup that helps people in 24 countries find a house share. He also coordinates French Tech Hub.
The idea here is to foster and accelerate and create a bridge between France and London in terms of, tech startup in France, intending to open an office in the UK. We are here to help.
Xavier and his team develop mind games to help people sharpen their wits. Their phone app is a world leader.
London is a very attractive place to start your company. So there's much easier access to investments. There's a number of tax incentives for business angels to invest in company. It's much easier to take risk.
If you can't afford new designer shoes, you can pick up a pair second-hand online. Vestiaire Collective have found that French savoir-faire in fashion exports well.
Being French in fashion and having that expertise, that knowledge, being trained in France, having done a French famous fashion school, for example, is a huge advantage. And then we have to adapt to understand this is a different culture.
London is home to about 200,000 French people. Many are clearly thriving in the business-friendly capital.
More of today's business headlines for you now. It could be a stormy day ahead of the British oil company BP. Its shareholders are meeting to vote on topics including a proposed 20% pay rise for CEO Bob Dudley. The raise would bring his pay package to nearly $20 million amid a difficult period of falling earnings for oil companies. Many major investors have already said they plan to vote against the pay rise. Volkswagen, meanwhile, says it'll cut top managers' bonuses significantly in the wake of the emissions scandal. The carmaker says it needs to send a signal on executives' responsibility and pay. The board of directors is to approve the cuts and review Volkswagen's 2015 accounts later this month. And shares in the camera maker GoPro soared by almost 20% on Wall Street on Wednesday. That's after it hired former star designer at Apple, Danny Koster. He'll become vice president of design at GoPro at the end of the month. The company's been struggling to maintain momentum since launching on the stock market 2 years ago.
And that wraps it up for the business news. Thank you, Stephen. More from our business editor in the next hour of Live from Paris.